Hello there, Paul.
Hey Zach, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good, especially since I've got to talk to a bunch of the of your wonderful cast, Lynn Shay, Bob Mosley, some others, and I've got more coming tomorrow. Um, and now I get to talk to you about writing and directing this like scary but funny, but scary but funny kind of movie.
Yeah, that
Um,
was the point. That was our aim, was to kind of turn it on its head a little, and be funny but scary, but something for a more general audience. That has the thrill. Because comedy and horror are so close anyway. So that was the point. So I'm glad you got that from it.
I mean, comedy and horror are the two genres that I want to go see in the movie theater because you get that reaction from audiences. Tell me about I don't know the first time kind of playing this in front of an audience. Were you nervous? Were you relieved that it worked out? Or did you go, oh, I'm gonna have to go back to the editing bay one last time?
No, we spent a bunch of time in the editing bay, because that's the whole thing about balancing a story like this, of the highs and the lows of the comedy and the horror. So it took us a while to kind of figure out the balance in the first place. But no, the audience, we showed it at Popcorn Frights in Florida first, as a festival premiere. It went down great. Was I nervous? Yeah, definitely nervous, because you never know, it's so subjective, films to an audience, whether people are going to like it or not. But no, so far the responses have been great, so it's been a thrill.
You're kind of, most well known for music videos, incredible videos. Tell me, did you get pigeonholed into that, or was that like your
No, I started making films when I was a teenager. Do you know what I mean? I was 13, 14, and went to film school, and music videos I fell into after film school. I'd made a short film, and took that around a bunch of record labels, thinking that's probably an easy way to get hired, is because there was a making, this is 1989. They were making a lot of music videos then, and there was a lot of money. So it
golden
was
age?
Yeah, it was. It truly was. So it was an easy fit for me. I was surprised because I never ever thought I would get hired, because I studied fine art film at St. Martin's. It wasn't USC. It was our first project was a roll of clear celluloid with no emotion on it. And they just gave it to us and said, go make a film. We're like, how do we were scratching on it. And so it was a great training. And music videos to me have been like that. They've been like a sketchbook. But I've also been writing the whole time since I started. But it took a long time for me to really learn how to write. So, and I wanted it to be my own voice. So it took more time because I want to write and direct my own movies. It's not, here's a director for hire. It's a longer journey, but yeah, it's been great.
I have heard, kind of horror stories about, writer directors trying to get funding for their movies. And I imagine, executive producer and your star, your muse, or my muse, Lynn Shay, may have played a part in that. Can you talk a little bit about getting her on board and
Yeah.
getting, people like Bill Mosley, and raising the money for this project?
Yeah. Well, we were working on the project for a long time before it came to life, because I think we were originally going to make this film, on our phones and do it for nothing. And then we just got in touch with Lynn, once we got the script to where we wanted it to be, we were like, well, who would be great to play the psychic? And so we went to Lynn initially to play the role of Bill. And she read the script and she goes, I always play the psychic. I always play she goes, I want to play the badass boss. I want to play the badass. So she took the role and ended up writing a lot of her dialogue. And, but that was where became involved as a producer, because she just got so into it. Which was amazing, really. And then we raised the money. Basically, I worked with an actor who was in the film, who's also was the financier. So it was an opportunity for me to give someone an opportunity as an actor. And then in turn for them, they became a participant in making the film. So it was, and most of the times in that situation, it's some Russian guy with, hey, put my wife in the movie, fund
Yeah.
your film. Usually that's a dangerous path. But Kurt Deimer, who plays the Grog in the film, was the investor, and he and now we've made two other films since, and we're making more. So we kind of formed an alliance, and it's been great. So that's how we raised the money to do it. It was a low budget movie. You know, we did a lot. We shot for 20 something days up in Altadena in a house that survived the fire. And it's the oldest house in Altadena, and it survived the fire. So, you know, that was kind of a miracle.
You talked about, having a low budget, but not to spoil anything, but when I was watching the movie kind of halfway through, I could not tell if a certain character was wearing makeup or a mask, or if their face had been like CG'd
Mm.
somehow, or if they were, if it was the actor or a prop. I'm like, what did you do to their face? So my question is, what did you do to their face?
We did all of the above. You know, we did makeup on the day, and then you know, because it was like when we made the film, we weren't sure how far to take that. You know, because it it was an evolving process between comedy and we were like, okay, should we take this scene funny? Should we take this skate? You know, we were balancing it as we were shooting it because it's satirical and it's not all about the jokes. It's more about the tone. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was a combination of practical effects and then a little bit of CG. And then of course Lynn underneath it. Yeah. But we were
Uh,
okay. To me, it was okay that it started to look like a mask because the whole conceit of the film was the actors didn't know whether she was doing it for real. You know, they're all like, "Are you all right?" You know, that's part of the humor is in how outrageous it is. Not only her behavior, but how she looks. You know, we kind of, you know, we're trying to make it a little funny too. You know,
sure.
rather than it's just scary. It was, you know, so that's what that was the origin of that.
Tell me a little bit about finding the tone. And you have your script, then you have shooting, and then you have editing. Um, is there a version of this that is the scariest version that you could have possibly made? Is there a version that's like straight up, comedy? And is there a version that's like, like a more family friendly PG that you were just like, nah, it's
You
gotta it's
know,
gotta have the edge of an R.
yeah, it's interesting you say that. It's a good question because you know I believe there's three films. There's the one you write, there's the one you shoot, and then there's the one you end up with. And that's only because for me, I like the process of things evolving as they go. You know, I'm not so set in stone as it has to be like this. And you know, they're amorphous to me. So yeah, that process was no, there wasn't three films. There was just the balance of comedy against scares. Like, do we use scary music? Do we make it funny? You know, it was more that than because I think also when we got the film, we didn't really know what we had because it was such an experimental process on set with it. Because look, we took Bill, who usually plays scary characters, and made him straight, and then we took Lynn, who usually, I mean, to me, the strength of Lynn is in their comedic talent, like something about Mary Kingpin. That's how I know Lynn. Insidious, she's like a number one horror icon, but I see her more as comedy. So that was an easy fit for me, was to have her just play it straight, but just nasty. And it was amazing that she saw that in the script. She's like, I want to do that, rather than just play the typical sidekick, you know, which he would have been brilliant in Bill's role too. But so yeah, that was a when that happened, I realized, okay, you know, this I need to turn this thing on its head and adopt the absurd a little more and play more into the satire and more into the, you know, write about what you know, the film business, film crews, people. That's what I know. I know the behaviors, the dynamics. So that was easy. Once I got the right characters in place. So, but the tone wasn't decided in the edit. It was just more the emphasis of do we lean more comedy, more horror, and tied into the music and all that kind of stuff. So
Sure. As long as Lynn didn't base her overbearing director on you.
no, no, maybe when I was younger, but no, no, it was never like that. No, not a chance. But
Okay.
yeah,
Phew.
just also, you know, because it's you know, we're playing into the stereotypes too. You know what I mean? The cliches, all of that. You know, I'm playing right into that. It's kind of a love letter to horror movies, in as much as just embracing all of the nuances and the cliches and you know, with her character especially. We wanted to play it on the nose, you know.
Let's yeah, I mean, and the result, I mean, it speaks for itself, but for, marketing and excitement purposes, I'll say it. It's a success. It's
Oh, good.
scary, it's funny. I didn't know what was going to happen next.
Right, right.
Um
But that's good, right? I mean, that's kind of what I love. I love that about movies is you just because if you know, then you've seen it before. Do you know what I mean? And then the other thing about this film is I wanted it to be a seen it before, haunted house, seance, orphaned kids. I mean, it's so on the nose. Do you know what I mean? I wanted it. I didn't want it to be clever or like ooh, I wanted it to be straight, just so that you got the joke. You
yeah.
know, that was kind of the because the real monster in the film is the horrible boss, right?
Mhm.
In the end, that's the kind of the takeaway is behavior and how we treat each other, and how your Jasper steps up and he goes to quit. He like puts his foot down because he's been abused long enough, and it ends up turning in his favor. But in the end, and then the whole twist of the end with the police and all that. I tried to kind of leave it open ended, but in a kind of, in a more interesting way than a gotcha, and see a little change in his character. And working with Olivier was incredible. He's a kind of new actor, but just such a
Yeah.
talented kid. And I just put him in another film too. So
Yeah, he kind of came out of nowhere for me. I haven't seen him in anything, but he definitely leaves an impression, and I think that he is a going to prove to be a rising star. I really liked him in this movie.
I really believe in him, man. He's a great kid. So yeah, it was, and my producer found the house. He lives out that way too. He Eric Barrett, my producer, he brought so much to the table. I've been working with him for almost 30 years, and he's like a creative producer too, with regards to casting and all that. So it's not just me. Like I have a really amazing team of believers and people that are, they want, we're a family, truly.
Isn't
You
it
know,
nice to have people who are actually working together for towards a common goal, and it all
Well,
kind of works out, and you
they
have
say that
help?
about filmmaking, right? That it takes a village, and it's true. It really is. I mean, you look, the amazing thing is a kid can take a phone now and go out and make a movie. I mean, it's very different than when I was a teenager, where you had to buy the film, send it off, get it processed, get it back, transfer it to video, figure out how you're going to edit, or be cutting on Super 8 with your little splicer.
Whew.
Now it's in the hands of the kids, and that's what's incredible. It's just, you know, anyone can do it now. It doesn't mean everything's going to be great, but it means it's in the hands of the people, which is why I think we're getting such interesting stuff now. Like you know what I mean? And with the advent of like the internet and streaming, we've never had more access to great stuff in our lives. It was much harder to see a film. Remember back in the day, you had to go money, go to the theater. Now it's right here. So hopefully people will embrace it the way you have and enjoy it. That's really all I want. It's not about making the best film. It's just about trying to connect with people and make something that is, keeps them watching, because audiences are so smart. We've seen everything, you know what I mean? We binge watch 20 episodes over a weekend.
True.
I think audiences are different now. They're much smarter than they were years ago because just the amount of content that we consume.
Yeah, and keeping someone's attention for 90 minutes in the age of TikTok, and although maybe you brought it on yourself as a music video pioneer.
Probably.
You only had 3 minutes to tell a story. And, you've got Shania Twain and motorcycles and sci-fi,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't know. And that became a legendary video. Probably had a
Yeah.
bigger budget than this movie.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. No, those were yeah. I mean, that was what I was saying about videos being a sketchbook. It allowed me to kind of experiment with cameras, technology, visual effects, narrative. And if you can tell a story in a minute or 3 minutes, then that allows you to sharpen your skills as to what are the essential elements to tell a story. And with videos, it was much more people were willing to allow you to take the risks. Go do what you want. It's a music video. So, but I took it deadly serious when I was doing those. Like, I took it serious. You know what I mean? I was really ardent to try and make something great and make a name for myself. But it was very hard because, you're working with artists and record labels. And it wasn't like when we started, it was do what you want. Go just here, take the money. In the end, it became such a debate, especially now. I'm sure that's different now because labels don't really play as big a part because artists are so many of them are just self-financed and self-funded and they're doing it on their own. Same with filmmakers. It's amazing, really, if you think about it. It's a complete paradigm shift. It used to be impossible. It used to you needed lots of money, a huge amount of, but now you can just get out there, and
Yeah.
I encourage people to do that. You know,
I guess the paradigm change now is that they'll throw significantly less money at it,
yeah,
but you can kind of do whatever you want as long as the
right,
final product is watchable, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah, and that's okay. Look, budgets have been overblown and still are overblown. My daughter was in the last Jurassic Park movie. That talk about budgets. Do you know what
Oh
I
yeah.
mean? Talk about overblown. We had like we had the craft service budget. So and also, having come up through videos and commercials, that that's the one thing is that we know how to work a budget. Do you know what I mean? We know what the best way to get, value out of the dollar because we've had to do it for 30 years. Just how the hell are we going to do this? Figure out a way, and so that's come in really handy to allow us to be able to have a lot of production value for very little money. Hopefully that will serve us as we move forward, in Hollywood.
Kind of a cost-cutting measure that people that's kind of been ballyhooed for a while now is generative AI and that stuff. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like some of the posters at the end
Oh yeah.
during the credits are AI.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I thought that they were funny and cute. But I also know I don't know for a fact, but I know it's true that that's going to be a sticking point once more people see the movie. They're going to have opinions on that. Can you tell me a little bit about
Yeah. Well,
including
those.
them and kind of bracing yourself for people who are going to go, oh, well, what else is AI and the
Yeah.
backlash, you know?
And I'm open to the questions. There's nothing in the film is AI apart from the posters at the end, and that's a joke because the Grog, who is in the film, and that's part of the running joke of the film was, oh, this reminds me of a movie I was in.
Yeah.
That's the running tagline. So we wanted to see the movies that he's in at the end and just make it a joke. I mean, there's House of a Thousand Grogs, Franken Grog. It's a joke. Do you know what I mean? So the best way for us to take the piss and make it a joke was to make them an AI, So just that is a way to use the technology, not to, because we were obviously faking it. It's not, we're not trying to say these are real. And what we did was in line with that, we did a whole bunch of marketing material where we put him on in the actor studio with Larry King. We put him on set with Steven Spielberg. Like we created a fake history kind of in a way what they did with Blair Witch. Remember, they kind of created this fake. It was more to do with that of just making it funny and diving into the character because the Grog is someone that we're going to continue into other films.
Oh.
So it was more about the fake history and making it like when the posters come up, they're not meant to be, oh, he really was in a film. They're meant to be funny. Like, oh my God, that's silly. And the silliness is an important part of this film. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of how I am too. Do you know what I mean? I'm like a joker. I'm always, the silliness is important. It has the absurdity and the campness too. Do you know what I mean? We're not trying to be straight. We're trying to be a little twisted and a little skewed so that it just has more personality and it's more textured and more interesting. The characters, by just twisting the tone a little to try and make something a little different. I mean, my God, everything looks the same. Everything, so many movies are the same. It could be the same director, but you know what I mean? It's just, and that is part of AI too, has done that and it's going to get more like that as people open up and real non-artists start working with AI. Everything's going to change. There's going to be AI films and then there'll be regular. I think it's going to split, to be honest, rather than it all become AI. There's just no way, it's
Sure.
too easy, for the artist it is, and artists love challenges, right? It's not about just press a button. It's the process, the journey, you know, I think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be robots making the best fucking movies we've ever seen.
It
You know,
won't.
the
It won't.
Optimus will come and make some movie, be like, what? How did you figure that
I I don't think that'll come to pass.
out?
But who knows?
We'll
We'll
see.
see.
We'll see, man.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
see.
thank you so much for talking to me, for indulging my silly questions,
I
and
appreciate
for making this movie. I can't wait to see the further adventures of the Grog wherever they may manifest.
I appreciate it, Zach. Thanks so much, man. We're just keeping independent film alive, and I really appreciate your questions and your interest in the project. So thanks.